guess it started in the fall. It started in the fall and ended in February, where we engaged through 5 different sessions to talk about kind of innovative ways to actually get the workforce and the talent that you're looking for. I will let Amy do a little better description of that series, but this Encore was basically to kind of follow up with those participants who were with us through the series that was previously, but then also to kind of share with others who weren't able to be part of that series what it was all about, and to kind of give an update and launch into to what we could potentially even kind of offer as the next opportunity for higher power. So with that, I think I've babbled on long enough that hopefully everybody is on who is able to be on, and I will throw it over to Amy. I will just last minute just say a couple housekeeping things. If you can keep on mute for the time being, if you have questions or things that you want to raise, go ahead and drop something in the chat, and I will I will jump in and interrupt Amy where it's appropriate, and there'll be plenty of time, I think, toward the end of this session to have more conversation. So with that, I will step out and toss it over to Amy. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's great to be back. So for those of you who have been part of the Higher Power series, welcome back for Encore. And for those of you who may not have participated in the series, this is a good opportunity to learn a few things along the way, because I'm going to be spending a part of our time recapping what we did throughout the last 5 sessions, and then also talk about some things I've seen over the last couple of months. So just a little about me. I am the president and lead consultant and founders of .org Solutions. We are a marketing, fundraising, and strategic planning firm that works mostly with nonprofits and some for-profit companies that work in the nonprofit space. I've worked actually for more than 30 years in marketing, planning, operations, also in fundraising. So I've worked for a lot of very large organizations over the years, and for the last 15 years, and 15 and a half years actually now, have run .org. So I do a lot of blogging, I do a lot of presenting, I write on marketing and leadership. I also am just really a voracious learner. I am a graduate of Bowling Green, Go Falcons, and the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. And then just in kind of my spare time, but also just it's always been an interest to me of new data and tech, which really is a lot of what we've talked about with this whole entire Higher Power series. It's about, there's a lot of digital, there's a lot of we're going to be talking a little bit about AI today and some other things along those lines. So what are we going to cover today? So as I mentioned, I'm going to do some content highlights around the prior Higher Power sessions. I unfortunately am not going to be able to dive too deeply into those sessions. I picked out what I thought were the most important things to talk about in each of those areas. So hopefully this will be a nice recap for those of you who did participate, and hopefully for those of you who are new to this group, you're actually going to be able to get a few things out of it that make sense in the short time that I'm able to do the recap. I'm also going to talk about effects of timing and changes in the marketplace on all marketing. So this will not only apply to hiring, but also applies to any type of marketing that your organizations may be engaged in. So if there's those of you who are marketing folks on this call, not HR folks, this is relevant to you in other areas of your work. And then I want to talk about some new concepts. So again, things that I have seen since February of 2024, since we last met. And hopefully these are things that you can put into work or even start to think about as you're putting your hiring plans together for the last quarter of the year and even into 2025. Righty, so let's talk about some of our Higher Power highlights. So I want to talk today about a couple different things. So really, first and foremost, the importance of marketing and hiring. So for those of you who were in our sessions, I really talk about hiring, and marketing and hiring is really a lot around having a marketing mindset. So things like treating potential hires like customers. It is things like making sure that you are in the right place at the right time with the right people, things of those nature. We're also going to be talking about the importance of building hiring personas. And so those of you who've been with me for this whole session, it is something I've talked about every single time. I'm going to talk about it again today because it's that important, is understanding who your potential hires are and where they are. And then also the role of storytelling in hiring. And so storytelling is just a word that is being used all over the place. It was being used last year. It's continuing to be used. So that's the reason I wanted to highlight that as part of our session today. Before I go ahead and get into everything, as Emily mentioned, please, 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 for those of you who that have questions, please ask them. I like these sessions to be interactive. You are not going to throw me off my game if you ask a question, and I would rather ask those questions in real time. We will have time at the end. I have padded quite a bit of time for that. And then also during our session, we are going to have a time for you to share some things that you have actually implemented since February, and then maybe some questions that you have around things that you've implemented that maybe you're not 100% sure are working the way that you want them to, or that they worked really well and you want to share them with the group. Right. So let's talk about the role of marketing and hiring. So there's really 3 reasons that you are going to use marketing in your hiring practices. The first is because you want to attract talent. Second is you want to recruit talent, and those are 2 different things, and I'll talk about why. And then you want to retain talent. So in attracting talent, it's a situation where you want people to come to you. So they may not be specifically looking for a job, but you are doing things out in the public where you are actually making people aware that you exist. So a lot of companies don't have that strong employer brand image and culture, and so they're not really demonstrating value to potential employees. So some of what you need to do is really work around having talent understand and know who you are and what there might be potentially for them to look for when they might be looking for a job. That is different than recruiting talent. So recruiting talent is really when you are going out there and saying, we have jobs available and we are going after particular people for particular jobs. So difference, again, attracting your talent versus recruiting talent is very different on the marketing side, because attracting talent is a lot more passive. So you are doing things that aren't necessarily saying, hey, we have jobs available. What you're really saying is we're just a really great company with really great people that has a really great product and a lot of things to offer. So when you're recruiting talent, though, that is when you're saying, hey, we have jobs open. So we have seasonal jobs that are open. We have certain times of year that we want to recruit, and we're building campaigns around that. We had a lot of openings in a particular area that we need to fill. So that recruiting part really is very much set on having specific campaigns, having specific content, and being able to measure and get insights into what you are doing, because you need to know what is being effective and what is not. And then the last thing is retaining talent. So, we all want to keep our best employees. There's a lot of things that you need to do in order to do that. And some of that is marketing based. So it's training, it's getting people engaged, it's getting people feel like they're a part of something, which especially now with a lot of hybrid work is not as easy as it used to be. But how do you do that? So it's good communication, it's having a good culture, it's giving people opportunities to get together and feel valued and a part of something. So you can see that from all facets of the hiring spectrum, I suppose, you're using marketing in all of those places. Sorry, my screen thing keeps popping up and I can't get to my slide buttons here. All right, so what are some keys to successful hiring using marketing? So as I mentioned at the beginning, it's really important to adopt a marketing mindset. So when you're thinking of hiring, you want to think in terms of campaigns. And so when I say campaigns, we're thinking of having goals, having rollout plans. It's having schedules for deploying certain pieces of content. It's about planning the kinds of media that you're going to be using and what you need to have in order for that to happen. It's about having strong creative, and it's about having storytelling and themes that actually resonate with people. I think it's really, it's one of those situations where we also, when we're doing anything, when it comes to marketing, we have to actually sometimes take ourselves out of what our role is internally, and we have to put ourselves in the seat of the person who's going to be receiving the information that we're going to send. And so we want to make sure that our ideal customers are, we're really able to understand like what it is that they're looking for and so forth. So you want to also create potential or treat your potential hires like customers. So, and I will talk about this in a little bit in terms of shifts, is that for the last couple of years, potential hires have had the upper hand in terms of, being able to select jobs and telling employers and potential employers what it is that they're looking for. And so customers are very similar to that, but it's also important to treat them like customers, because even if they don't get a job, if they feel like the experience that they had was a positive one, and that you as an organization communicated with them effectively, let them understand the process along the way, and all of those good things, they're actually going to speak possibly decently about you and say, well, I didn't get the job, but I have to say this seems like a really good company that has a good plan in place, and I hope they get the right person. I just wish it would have been me. So, again, treating those potential customers or potential hires like customers. You also want to make sure that your employer branding has clear, engaging job descriptions. So one of the sessions that we did last time in one of our sessions is I showed an example of a job description, and I actually picked on ourselves. So we had a job description that was very much an employer-focused job description. And I started to read a bunch of things as I was preparing for the sessions that I delivered last year. And one of the things that came up was that so many job descriptions are not focused on the experience that a potential good employee would have looking at jobs that you have. And so I used some simple AI prompts, and I put our job description into AI. And I realized how terrible our job description was and how really good and customer focused I could make it. And so it's something that I really encourage all of you to consider, is taking a look at any job descriptions that you have open and really looking at them again through that customer lens, where you're going to be able to speak to them as to how they can see themselves fitting within your organization. Instead of saying, this is what you have to do for us in order to be qualified, it's, hey, can you see yourself here working with us? So that's just an opportunity there. So as I have talked about many times, is the importance of hiring personas. So for anyone who is new to this session or just wants a quick refresh, is that any type of persona is critical when you want to do marketing. So it's really about understanding your customers. It's understanding where they are, what are their challenges, what kind of interests do they have, how do they prefer to communicate? Because some people prefer text, some people prefer email, some people don't do either. Some people like a good old-fashioned phone call. Others may be heavy on social media, others may not. So it's understanding who you're going after for particular jobs, and not just applying a single methodology to every single job opening or hiring campaign that you're putting together. It's also understanding what somebody's looking for in a job, and what are some opportunities where you meet and interact with them. So I hope that some of you actually put together some hiring personas, and I believe in some conversations that I had later last year that some of you did. But if you have not, I wanted to just recap this and show you our sample hiring persona. And this is our fictional person. So we created a fictional persona of Fabricator Frank. We know that Frank is 28. He lives by your plant in Akron. And this could be anybody. This could be, you know, fundraiser Fran if you're a nonprofit hiring for fundraisers. It could be Nurse Nancy if you're hiring for LPNs. It could be anything specific to that. But you want to say, okay, what is their current income and what kind of education do they have or training that might be relevant for you to know. But then you're going a little deeper into understanding what are they actually thinking? You know, what are they looking for? They want stability. They want opportunities for advancement, good pay and benefits, and they want an active work environment. What are, you know, what are their challenges? Well, they might think that applying for a new job is difficult and they don't maybe have the experience and they don't have a professional looking resume, or they have some childcare issues that they're dealing with. Maybe they have a shared parenting situation where they need to be flexible, or they need to, you know, do some things around a specific time frame. And then what are some things that they need to do to succeed? So they need an easy way to apply and well-organized onboarding and a stable schedule. So these are all like really important things that can tell us a lot about Fabricator Frank and other people who are like Fabricator Frank who might be applying for a job. So, you know, going through each of these particular categories, so they're looking for specific things in a job. So those 4 things that you've identified are specific things that you should probably be including in your job descriptions. They should be included in your marketing copy that you're using for job postings. Their challenges. What are some of their challenges? They think applying is going to be hard. Maybe they don't have a car and they can't get there, and all you have is a paper application process. Well, maybe you have to make sure your application process is online and it's not a downloadable PDF because Frank doesn't have a printer. And maybe you want to make sure that you have an online application that's a form that can be easily filled out on a cell phone. So these are things that can really be, can tell you a lot about what you need to do from a marketing standpoint. And then we go to the communication preferences. So Frank likes to text over phone calls. So we're not going to call and leave him a message. Maybe we have his number and we text him and say, hey, Frank, this is Amy from .org Solutions. And I see that you've applied. Can we arrange a time to talk? So meeting people where they are is really important. You know, Frank is active on Instagram too, so maybe we start to think about, maybe this is where some of our other people for this position might be, and maybe advertising is something we do on Instagram. Maybe we don't send Frank everything via email unless we text him and tell him that we've sent something to his email. And then, you know, we don't really want to send anything through the mail because maybe Frank's transitional. Maybe he doesn't really check his mail, or maybe he has problems getting his mail for whatever reason. So these are things just to really look at when your personas are being put together, and they can really frame what you are looking for and where you should be. All right, so I will get off the topic of personas. So if you haven't done them, do them. And you can certainly use that template to be able to do that. And I will take this opportunity. I do believe that all of the slides and all of the download materials are still on the Connexus website. So I don't know if either Jean or Emily can get that link and put that into the chat. Then that way you guys can have it. So thank you very much. I think those are, there's a lot of really good stuff on those as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about storytelling. And we did a whole session on storytelling, and storytelling is kind of it's a really broad thing to talk about, because what really makes a good story and why is it really important in hiring? So anytime somebody tells a really good story, it helps create a deeper connection with an audience. So think of yourselves and how you've been immersed in a good story, whether it's a television show or whether it's a heartwarming post that you see somewhere. Maybe it's a short video that touches you. It really helps you build those deeper connections with people. It also humanizes your company, helps your potential hires understand, like, why they should work for you and how your people interact with each other. It also, and also too, I mean, this is the craziest part, is that you think of a story, you're 22 times more likely to remember the facts in a story than you are in just straight on marketing copy. So if you can tell your story or if you can tell your hiring story in terms of an actual personal experience story, there is a really good likelihood that you're going to get more interaction. People are going to have some better memories of you. Also, customers want you to tell them. And customers, again, remember we talked about this, is that your potential hires are also to be treated like your customers. So your customers are anybody who interacts with your company or organization in any way. So 75% of people would really want their brands to tell a story. And then anytime you tell a story, your conversion rates can be boosted by about 30%. So a conversion rate is when somebody takes an action that you want them to take. So it's pushing a button, it's contacting you, it's applying, it's answering a question, it's for nonprofits, it could be donate, it can be all sorts of things. So anytime a story is being told, it can boost your conversion rates by 30%. So let's take our fabricator Frank example. So maybe you're telling a story about Fabricator Frank. And Fabricator Frank is a single dad who was looking for flexibility at your company. He got it. He didn't maybe have the training that he thought was needed, but your company offers that training, and it's paid on the job training to be able to get him to what he wanted. And 5 years later, Frank is now managing that division of the company and has really taken on a significant leadership role, and continues to teach as part of the training because he values what has been done for the organization. So think of like how you can put those parts together, or how you can get people to actually help you tell your story by telling their story. All right. Also, what makes a good story? So we talked about this a lot. For those of you who were in that session, that was kind of a fun one. I used Toy Story, the movie, to talk about storytelling, and I don't have time today to actually go through that. So, but if you want to see kind of how that goes, that is on the storytelling slide, so you can look at that. But storytelling, as I mentioned, it helps you provide those deeper connections. And so it does that by promoting what makes you unique. It also inspires and motivates people. It really engages audiences. I think of like the different short stories I see on Instagram, or the reels that I see on Facebook. Really short, but can be very engaging. It makes you curious to see more. And obviously, if you watch certain types of things, especially on social media, it'll curate those additional things for you. But they're organized as well. So you have to make sure that you're following along and how to do a good story. And it shows and doesn't tell. And I think that's the thing that's different about straight marketing copy versus storytelling copy, is that it shows people how something works as opposed to telling them how it works. So how do you start telling your story? So, I'm going to pound this in. You can understand your audience. So what actually relates to the people that you're trying to relate with, your personas, and how do you attract your audience? What is your story and why do you want to tell it? So storytelling isn't just about saying we just have to tell more stories. And I hear that a lot from organizations. We need to tell more stories. And I will say that telling more stories isn't going to fix bad other things that are happening within your organization. So if you're trying to use storytelling to, cover up things that aren't going so well, that's really not the way to do it. You got to fix some of those internal things first, but storytelling can enhance the things you are doing very, very well. So keep that in mind. But what is your story? Your story is not the same as another person's story. What do you want to tell about your company? Why is that important to somebody who might be wanting to come to work for you? How is your story also talking to the people that are internal? So if your external story and your internal story are different, that says something not so good to the people internally, because those internal people are going to say like, well, they're just, they're lying and this is not really what it's like here. So make sure that your company story externally and internally align. And how do you want your audiences to feel? Um, People always remember how you make them feel. And so if you want them to feel a certain way, what is it that you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel inspired? Do you want them to feel hopeful? Do you want them to feel, um, excited? Do you want them to feel like they're ready to come work for you? And so that's where it's important to say, like, what is your ultimate goal? So the stories that you tell internally and externally can be about the same person, but oftentimes the type of messaging that you're putting out there is very different. Next thing you need to do is choose your medium. So we'll talk a little bit here about the different media. Most of these sessions have focused on digital media, just because that is where most people are, and that's where most people are looking for their information. So you have to figure out where you want to tell the story. Do you want to tell it on social media? Do you want to tell it on YouTube? Do you want to tell it in other ways through paid advertising? So what are some of those things that you want to do? And then also, how do you want to tell it? Do you want to tell it in pictures? Do you want to tell it in narrative form? Do you want to tell it in video? And those are things that you'll have to figure out. As I mentioned, if you actually go and look at the slides on the storytelling session, it will talk a lot about what sets up a good story. So it's your main characters, it's the place the story takes place, it's the conflict, and it also has a beginning and end and lots of things in the middle. So make sure you actually really outline your story so that you're relating to your audience, but it also has a purpose and has a specific call to action that you want people to take. All right, so as we talk about storytelling, there's always a question of like, well, how long should it be? What should I do? What matters? So job seekers are actually looking at both long and short form content. And so I will say long versus short form in today's age is very different. So short form is that less than 30 seconds, down and dirty, state the facts, all that kind of stuff. Longer form, you're getting into that minute, maybe 2 minutes. But that's even getting a little bit long. I don't have, I'm not, as part of this presentation, I'm not going to go through this, but if you are interested, I would suggest even Googling like, what are the most important things to have in each part of your story? Because the first 30-second or the first 5 seconds of a 30-second video, let's take for instance, and the first 5 seconds of a minute-long video have totally different purposes. And so there are best practices out there if you're doing any kind of video or things of that nature, or even just audio stuff that are really important for you to follow so that you're hitting the right marks at the right time for people. I also suggest using testimonials and advocacy programs to tell the story. So, things like an Instagram takeover, for instance, or photo testimonials of your employees, of maybe a training program that you have, or maybe it's 5-year milestones or different things that you might want to highlight. Maybe it's an appreciation month for a particular group of employees that you have that you want to recognize. So there's lots of opportunities there to use testimonials. And you have a lot of people, whether you know it or not, that love being in front of the camera. So you can probably get that as well. And then you always just want to be relatable. So make sure any type of story you're telling, whether it's video, audio, or written, is that your brand story relates to the people that you're trying to get in front of. And this all goes back to personas. So just a quick little thing I will say on long form versus short form content, a couple quick things. Long form content is really ideal for telling your company story, explaining your company culture, history, employee testimonials, things like that. They can live on your website, they can live on your career page, they can live on your company YouTube channel. So those are really good reasons to use long form content. Short form is really good for like quick employee stories, fun work perks that you have, maybe the day in the life of somebody. And things like this are really good. So long form are better for attracting people who are actively looking potentially. Short form are for people who are passively potentially looking for jobs. So they may see something on TikTok or they may see something come up in your Instagram app and it may grab their attention, but it has to be fun and engaging and appropriate for that purpose. So a couple examples, I always like to show examples, and I did show these in my session. I loved both of these for different reasons. So on the left, we're talking about an organization. They're talking about the joy of reading. Now, this is not a job ad, but this is an ad that actually just tells a really great story about an organization. So this is how we feel about getting a new book. There are these book libraries going on, but we have this really awesome picture of these two kids who are holding books and look really excited about what they're doing. And so it's a story that is being told without telling a story. So something that's great to have on your social, because I will tell you, a lot of people who are looking for jobs look at your social media to see what you are doing. And they're not just looking for job stuff, they're looking for impact, especially for those of you who are working at nonprofits. The one on the right, I love, and this was such a great one because this is a family-owned business. For those of you who live in the west side of Akron, Copley, you're probably familiar with Craft Growers. They're very active on social media. They do a great job talking about their company, but this was a great way to showcase their company, but also show the connection of the family-owned business. So great way to look at this is that, the founder, John Graff, and his granddaughter, who is now one of the co-owners of the business. It was a great way to make that connection between the two of them. All right. So I want to take a few minutes here, and I'm going to put everybody on the spot a little bit, though I will say that Emily did maybe forewarn people that I might be doing this, but I would love to hear what all of you have been up to, because a lot has changed. And as I talked to many of you from the first session we did and then through February, it sounded like a lot of people were implementing things in their own organizations. And so I would just like to open it up for a minute to see who has anything to share and if there are any questions at this point. Please do not be shy.
And I'll also kind of reiterate that anybody can just take themselves off of mute. Feel free to share their camera too. And if anything, I can pull up and kind of share maybe anonymously some of the responses that we even got from our survey, potentially even for some of the folks who weren't able to participate because of our outage. So give some space.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Terry.
Hi. I just wanted to share that, yeah, I think I told you many times that I was using a lot of the marketing specifically because I'm not responsible for hiring and recruiting, but I did translate a lot of the great information. And I loved how you tied the marketing and hiring together, because it really is advertising what positions are available and selling that to candidates that are applying. So we did take back the personas, and specifically with the persona related to marketing, tying that in with who are we trying to market to, where do they typically reside? Is Facebook the best vehicle to use? I think we have 1 or 2 sessions on that. Is LinkedIn the best vehicle to use? Where is that persona that you're trying to attract? So that was super important to us, and within our marketing groups, pulling that information together before we even got to the storytelling. So we still have a lot of work to do on the storytelling side with regards to marketing, but everything that you provided, it all tied together near the end of the session. So I just wanted to, reiterate that was very important to us, even outside of the hiring. But when you tie the hiring together with it, it makes so much sense, and it's unique and different than what you're typically seeing out in the like on Indeed or where you're looking for jobs. It's typically not done in the fashion that you did. And I think it would make it so much more attractive to an applicant if they were to implement a lot of the tools and strategies that you offered. So thank you for that.
I have a quick question as a follow-up. Did you have anything as you put together personas that was like, huh, maybe we should do this differently because we were assuming anything? Were the personas enlightening at all to you?
They
For your
were,
teams?
yes, and it seemed fair. We were all in agreement as we went through, students being one of our personas, and then employers. So students and employers were the largest. Where it really kind of came to light is when we match, those are the key personas that we attract, and then we did the analytics behind what is our social media made up of. And this was many months ago. We had a more weighted amount of posts that were not necessarily student related. So that kind of goes back to the storytelling. If we're trying to tell the story of the students and what successes they have and connecting them with the employers, we're not necessarily showing that on social media overall. So I think that's where we really kind of opened up the eyes with regards to the personas. If you are looking at a specific persona that you're trying to attract, then making sure that the makeup of your social media, of your website, of everything that you're marketing out to the community shows that that's the persona that you're trying to attract.
Good. And that's that's the reason I stress them so much, because I think we all have our default, right? We default with what we think might be working, but when we really use the data and we really start to think of our whoever our customers are as as people, right? And we start to think of like what their habits are, and we go a little deeper and go beyond what we assume, and we start to use some fact-based things and then look at the data behind it. It can really open our eyes to things like, okay, we got to shake things up a little bit. And that's great. I'm glad that you guys were able to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to share? No? Okay, well, there are plenty of opportunities to do so. So I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that, I do want this to be interactive. I want to ask questions. But if there's something that has worked well for you, or something that hasn't even worked well for you, that's another thing too. Or are there any things that you're struggling with to do, whether it's internally or externally? Please share those things as well. All right. Moving on. So I wanted to break down what we're talking about here into a couple of different things. I wanted to do things that haven't changed really much since our last session. And then I wanted to talk about things that I have seen that have changed. So, and the reason I wanted to do this was because, I think, there has been a lot that has changed, but I think there are some things that are really important about really holding the course. So we'll talk about those. So some of the things that have not changed. So, choosing the right ad platform and format are critical. And so when you're doing hiring campaigns, you want to make sure that you are where your potential hires are. And so, continuing to build those target personas, talking about your budget. So, that is still going to be really critical, is really saying like, hey, we need to allocate money to this hiring thing, because that is something that you have to invest in. It can't just be, you know, a static budget. So there are some investments that are going to need to be made. You have to also decide whether you are looking at single hires, and some organizations are. You're really looking at, you know, not ongoing hiring, whereas some organizations are constantly in a state of hiring. So there's certain industries that are doing that more than others. So, you know, in choosing your right ad platform or format, you've got to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. And so, you know, to Terry's point is that, you know, understanding like where your audiences are may determine where, what you need to be doing, what kind of stories you need to be telling. You know, it's still, hiring is still very industry and competition specific. I think there are some types of industries that will always, always, always be looking for, they're always going to be competing for hires. So you think of like financial services, you think of, I just saw an article, actually, I think it was in Cranes, that, you know, there's a shortage of lawyers that are coming out of school. There is a lot of competition in nursing and other healthcare professions. And so depending on that, I think those things are always going to stay the same. And then I think you're always going to have to look at, like, you know, you're always going to have an arsenal of assets as part of your hiring. So that's your, you know, video assets and photos and graphics and landing pages and job descriptions and testimonials and all those kinds of things. And so, you know, going back to the idea of thinking of things with a marketing mindset, you might have to have in your budget, you know, new video once a year. And I'm not saying all video, you know, you can do some video that's more static that can be used throughout things, but, you know, are you going to have to shoot new shorts every year, you know, little 30-second spots or even 10-second spots for TikTok? Or are you going to need to update your landing pages frequently, and who's going to be responsible for that? You're always going to have to revise your job descriptions. And so looking at the competition and all of those kind of things, I don't think any of those things on this list are going to change. You're just always going to have to keep those in mind as you're choosing the right ad platform and format, because it's just something you can't like set and forget on any of this stuff. And you'll just have to continually do that, no matter really, I think, what the technology is going to be. I'm also a huge fan of digital. So I think anytime, and if you're going to do any type of budget shift, I think that budget shift needs to go into digital strategy. And I think always your digital strategies are going to win. So that's going to include any type of content. So whether that is telling a specific story on social media or website. And I do actually want to comment on something, and Tara, I hope this is okay, but we actually worked with JOG and a couple other organizations on promoting summer youth employment last summer. And we actually, there was a woman who had gone through one of the programs and agreed to actually promote the program and tell her story. And it was a very brief story, but it exponentially increased engagement. And it was vibrant, and it really connected how participation in that one particular program led to her success as an entrepreneur. And so, you know, making sure that you have some of those things in your arsenal, I think, are wonderful. The even better part is she engaged on the social media platforms and commented on every single person who commented on her comments, and shared and did a lot of things, which really increased the reach. So, you know, making those investments in content and working with people to tell stories are you can't even imagine. And that was something that was mostly organic as well. And it led to a significant increase in applications. But it was coupled with strong strong graphics as well. So there were things that popped off the page and that people really felt like resonated with them. So I'm sorry, Terry, I hope that was okay that I shared that, but it was a very successful thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So you also, again, make sure you're using various platforms in digital. And I'm going to talk about those as just kind of a recap. And so using paid and unpaid is totally fine. And having strategies for both of them is really essential. And this is where your marketing team and your hiring team need to work together so that you are not fighting each other for space or for content or anything. And then the last thing is your calls to action. So this is about making sure you're giving yourselves the best opportunities for conversions possible. So, having your hiring stuff front and center on the front of your website, having an easy apply now button to an application on your website, have a contact us button specific to your hiring team on your website. So a lot of organizations have one contact us button. It goes to the same person. That person has to distribute things. Make sure your calls to action are very easy for people. And one on a page is not enough. So make sure that you're having opportunities at every chance for people to convert and heed your call to action. Sometimes the calls to action are as simple as, apply now, contact us, we're hiring, check out our jobs, those kinds of things. And those calls to action can be in paid media, they can be on your website, they can be in your organic social, they can be all sorts of places. So what are some ways from an organic digital that have not changed? So again, what I'm talking about here is still part of a recap, but it's things that haven't changed. So there have been a lot of articles and I've seen a lot of things like, well, is SEO dead because of AI? Is SEO still around? SEO is still alive and kicking. And if you are not taking somewhat of an SEO or taking an SEO mindset on your website, you're really missing a lot of opportunities because search engines are still pulling and ranking pages for organizations based upon keywords that they are scrolling for when people are asking questions, because people are still using and I would say majority of people are still using Google or still using DuckDuckGo or Bing or Safari or whatever they choose to use for their search engine to search. And so the search engines still have to actually give you search results. Yes, you are seeing more AI, but a lot of people are saying, well, that answer is not quite right. And people are understanding that that's not really the case sometimes. You want to be ranking organically. So that is things like, job listings. What are kind of things can you have on your what kind of things can you have on your website specifically to open jobs open, or LPN jobs open? It could be manufacturing job openings, it could be welding job opportunities, it could be all sorts of different things. So having those specific keywords that actually align with what people are searching for really help your organization rank higher for the jobs that you're trying to hire for. Your organic social media posts. Again, we've talked about this quite a bit. You can definitely use organic social media to promote job openings. You don't have to pay. The only challenge is that you want to make sure that people are interacting with those posts. So encouraging your employees to follow your social media and share things when they see it, because the more people share things, the more things get to the top. So, actually pushing your organic social media posts, again, talking about why it's, work anniversaries or people that have been there, longevity, things like that. You can also put into there, don't cost you a thing other than the internal costs that you put into it. And then, you can also use employee advocacy and referrals. And this works toward, this kind of is similar to sharing social media posts, but they can share job descriptions that may be shared with them via social or via email. So maybe you send emails out and say, hey, if anybody knows someone, we have job openings in these 3 areas. Refer people who you think might be good candidates to this. So letting people internally know is a really good way to be able to get good candidates, especially if, the employees that you have are people that are really part of your culture. They're not going to want people working there that don't have the same kind of culture fit. I don't think that they do. So what else are we looking at? So we then move as part of digital. We're going to talk, there's several different ways that you can use paid digital for hiring. And so one of the ways is obviously pay-per-click. So when we think of pay-per-click, we think of Google search sponsored posts, which I know are very hard in hiring, but are still opportunities. It's Google Display. So you can put money into Google Display, which shows up in all sorts of random places. It can show up at the top of your search engine bar. It can show up even in the side of a Facebook page. It can show up, in my case, I had an ad that we did. It wasn't a hiring ad, but an ad for an organization that we did on, and it showed up at the bottom of my Sudoku puzzle on my iPad one day. So they can really show up at a lot of different places in pay-per-click. In social media, obviously there's a lot of really great things that you can do with social media. You can do a whole lot of targeting. I know that hiring, there is a lot of restrictions on what you can do for hiring, but because you can't really target by age, you can't target by gender and all those kind of things, but you can't target by areas of interest. And so, if someone may have an interest in outdoors or maybe, some of those kinds of things that may be part of your persona, those are things that you can actually put into those. And you can even do by geographic area as well. And then over the top is one that I'll talk a little more about later, but over the top advertising is when you are seeing video across a whole bunch of different devices. So you will, as I mentioned, you can see things on a smartphone, a TV, computer. It's clickable. It includes YouTube as well, Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, some things that you can see across a variety of devices. And we're going to be starting to see that a lot more. And that is a big change that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then connected TV. So connected TV is different than over the top in the fact that it is more passive and it's harder to interact with. So I think of this like on a big screen. So you're going to see a commercial. So you'll see it on maybe Fire Stick, on your Roku TV, Apple TV, Chromecast, anything that is not a clickable ad is something that would be part of your connected TV. Whereas over the top can be clickable. So if you're watching something on YouTube, you can skip the ad or you can watch the ad, and there could be a call to action. Spotify, if you have it on your phone and you're listening and you hear it and you want to interact with it, you can do it. So there are opportunities where you can do clickable, and that's where over the top is a little bit different than connected TV. And again, I'll talk a little bit about more of those a little bit later because that is a big shift. All right. So what do you need to do all of the digital? So we've talked about a lot of these things already kind of within just the recap so far, but you really need the compelling job listings. So if you have not done, some revamping or relooking at some of the job descriptions that you have, take that opportunity to do it. And I am not at all against using AI tools for this. And so I think the most successful way to do this is to actually say things. So let's take a job description that maybe we're trying to appeal to youth. right? And so we have a job description. We're trying to hire youth ages 18 to 24 for seasonal jobs over the holidays when maybe they're home from college, right? Okay, we can't say that obviously in the ad, but we can say maybe seasonal work, things like that. Well, maybe our job description is hiring seasonal employees to do blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe what we do is we take a prompt or we create a prompt for our AI tools that says something along the lines of create a job description that is a little bit cheeky, that would appeal to an 18 to 24-year-old college student or recent high school grad or early career who is looking for seasonal work but wants a fun environment that will help them make a lot of money during Christmas, during the holiday season, and see what it comes up with. And words like cheeky, funny, youthful, things that would appeal to that generation that you are trying to reach. It's amazing the things that come out. So I was actually trying to do some things specific to just some email stuff that I was working on here. And I said, I really like something that's a little cheekier, a little fresher, or kind of funny, that has a little bit more, less corporate sounding, a little bit more fun. And I put a whole bunch of prompts in, and it was a little more than I was looking for, but it did soften some things up a lot more, and it helped a lot with the writing of what I was doing to make it sound more approachable to a general audience. So make sure that you're running your job listings through some AI tools just to kind of take a look at them, and then try to make them more compelling and make them be, again, very, very customer focused or hiring prospect focused. The second thing you need is definitely strong career landing pages. So one of the complaints that we hear a lot, and this isn't just landing pages, this is donation pages or any page where you have to do way too many clicks, right? So maybe your hiring page is they have to go to you send them to your homepage first, which is always a mistake. You never send anybody to a homepage if you're trying to do a call to action. So let's say they go to your homepage first, then they have to find the hiring page, and they click on the hiring page, and then on the hiring page they have to scroll through 50 job openings, none of which are relevant to them, and then they finally find it at number 51, and then they have to click, and then they go to a website that has all of the application process on there, and then they have to go through 50 of those jobs again before they find the 51st one, and then they finally click on it, and then they realize it's a paper application. That's a lot. So anytime that you can eliminate steps for a potential hire and make it easier for them to apply, you're going to have a much higher win percentage. So thinking about anytime you're doing an ad, call to action takes them to your landing page, to the job that they actually might have clicked on. Now, if you have a lot, it's a little different situation, but they go to the job description of the job that they're looking at, and you have a landing page around that. Why we're a great place to work, what you can do here as an employee. Here are training opportunities for new hires who are looking to get into this field, all of those things. And a very easy to find apply now button that takes them directly to an application that they can fill out 99% of the time online. So, or submit a resume, or however you'd like to do that hiring. So make sure that your career landing pages are very, very focused on the customer, and not having people if you're taking more than 2 to 3 steps, if you're taking more than 3 steps to apply for a job, I would be willing to bet that your conversion rates drop exponentially at that point. So keep it simple and think about the conversion paths, and actually go through and apply sometime yourself in your current situation and see how hard it is or how easy it is, and then recognize how that might be very difficult for your potential hires. We've talked a lot about engaging videos and visuals. So those are really important because those things pop up, whether it's online, on your website or social, or even in any type of other advertising that you're doing. Again, we talked about testimonials and employee stories. You want to make sure that you have people talking well about you and sharing that information. And then all of your call to action elements, which, we want to make sure that they have, that they're there and they're easy and that people can do them. And again, if you do not have a mobile application available to you, I would highly, highly, highly recommend getting that in place, because that's what hires are looking for. I always tell the story of like my kids looking for summer jobs, and even for the jobs that they are applying for now. All the applications, they're doing them on their phones. They're doing them when they're riding in the car. They're not riding in the car, and things like that. So, making sure that it's easy for people to apply or do what you want them to do. All right. So one of the other things that hasn't changed either is, timing and ad optimization. So you want to make sure that you are placing ads at the correct time. And honestly, I did not know this. I looked this up since we had our last conversation, but ads, peak search times for jobs are Tuesday mornings. So I don't know if people just have really bad Mondays and they realize that, after they left on Friday, the job that they thought they did not like, they're like, the weekend came, they're fine. And then Monday, it was still as bad as they thought. And they decided to apply on Tuesday. But research shows most candidates apply for jobs at the start of the work week, with Tuesday mornings being the highest. And then many job candidates search for jobs after traditional working hours, so after 5 o'clock. So when you're doing ad placement and timing, and even organic social posts, think about when you're placing those. So, think maybe our ad stuff should get pushed out Tuesday mornings, and maybe anytime we do an organic social post, it's after 5 o'clock or at 4:30, and we tell our teams to share it at that point. So think about that as well. You also want to make sure that you are A/B testing and optimizing all your ads. So always worth it to try to run 2 different versions of an ad. And it's nice because a lot of the digital platforms will provide you with A/B testing opportunities to see which one performs best. So you're not necessarily paying any more or any less, but the platform itself is allowing you to actually run 2 different ads at the same time to see which one performs. So it could be, now when you do A/B testing, you don't want to do like this ad and this ad are completely different. You want to change some things on them. So maybe it's a different picture in this ad versus this ad. Maybe you have a different color story in this ad versus this ad with the same photo. Maybe you change where the call to action button is, or some simple language to see how things perform. And so A/B testing is always a really good idea to see how you are best spending your dollars. And again, this is not something at all that is really changing. A/B testing has been around in digital, especially for, well, all marketing, for a really long time, and it will continue to, continue to be something that's important for you. All right. And then the last thing of things that I've noticed that have stayed the same is measuring success. So, we always want to measure, and digital gives us such a great opportunity to do that. So when I talk about, thinking of hiring and marketing and having that marketing mindset, I mentioned a couple times the importance of campaigns. And so having a campaign mindset helps you do a lot of things. So you're setting goals for what you're trying to do. So, okay, let's say we're going to have a fall hiring campaign, for instance, or maybe let's just use summer, because summer is an area that a lot of people hire during. We're gonna have a summer hiring campaign, and our goal is to fill X number of positions or get X number of applications, because we know that for every 2 application, only 50% of applicants may be qualified for the job. So we want twice as many as jobs that are available. We want to hire or have offers out for a number of people by a certain date. We want to increase the number of people who work at XYZ location by this percent. And so setting goals around it, right? So then as we talk about that, like, okay, what are we going to do? So we know our personas are this, so we want to make sure we have organic social posts written, and they launch a certain date. We want to have organic Instagram posts and Facebook by a certain point. We're going to launch this date, and we want to do this. And then we want to make sure we have Google search and a couple other things involved. And so all of those have really great metrics that you can look at. And so being able to track along the way and say, are we getting close? You know, so let's say halfway through the campaign, you're not seeing quite what you want to see, or maybe a quarter of the way, it's not really working. So maybe we need to optimize better. Are our calls to action strong enough? Is one ad performing, or social post performing better than the other? Are people engaging with our content? What are the things that they are doing? Are certain times of day working better? Things along those lines. So great part about having that campaign mindset and building campaigns is that you are able to iterate. So by understanding what you want to do allows you to change things also in real time. And I don't think that's going to change much really either, because you want to know, and your bosses probably want to know, right? Like, well, wait a minute, we're spending this money on advertising. We're spending this money on maybe campaign assets. You know, maybe we're working with an agency to do this. We want to know, are we getting out of this what we are intending? And is it working the way that we want to? So you're always going to want to measure your success. And again, with digital, it's really a lot easier to do because you can directly correlate so many different things to the campaigns. I will caution though, this is one thing that a lot of organizations we see sometimes struggle with, is that we have this really great data on the digital side that tells us things are performing well, but we're not always getting the feedback from the organizations, like, is this going the way you want it to? Are there any blips that we need to be aware of? Is there anything else we need to concentrate on? So make sure that you're hiring folks. I mean, don't just create the marketing campaign and then your marketing people are here in isolation and your hiring people are here in isolation. Make sure that you're constantly talking about whether that stuff is working, because the digital side can show a lot of great stuff, but if things are not truly converting on the HR side, then you have some work that you need to do. All right. Does anybody have any questions about kind of where we are, what we're seeing? Okay. I know you came for the new stuff, so we will talk about the new stuff now. So I started to see quite a few new trends since February. And I'm sure that a lot of you who are in hiring have seen some of the same things. Those of you who are in marketing are seeing the same things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the job seeker. So when I first did this presentation, job seekers were like totally in control, right? They were calling the shots. You were hearing quiet quitting. You were hearing all those things. And yes, are those things still occurring? Probably. Are they occurring in the same magnitude? Not nearly as much as you saw them in 23 and early 24. We are seeing, now this is not across all industries. This is across, I mean, this is obviously of industries who are probably still seeing that a lot more than others, and will continue to see that because there's just not enough candidates available for certain jobs. But you are seeing hirers are in a lot more control in many instances than they were not even a year ago. There's a lot of there have been layoffs in certain sectors. You are seeing hiring freezes in other sectors, jobs not being filled. And so job seekers aren't in many cases in control as much as they were, a short time ago. However, they are still very connected, meaning that, they're on their cell phones, that, I think I just did a recap of this, that just a year and a half ago, I think it was 91% of the population had cell phones and more than 81% were smartphones. Just recently, I saw it was a Pew, I think it was a Pew Research report that 97% of the population, this is the US population, has cell phones, with over 90% of them having smartphones. So, you know, even more people are connected and even more people are using smartphones to conduct a lot of their business. And it is, in many cases, their only computer. So I'm thinking about that. Job seekers are also very influenced, and they're not just influenced by, they're influenced by influencers. They're influenced by, online ads. Many people are buying things because they saw an ad on social media. Same thing could be for hiring. They're super distracted. People just have a lot going on. You have your email, you have your social media, you have, 10 streaming services, you have families, you have all sorts of other things. So people are very distracted, and they're impatient. So I think that those things have not changed. Now, as I mentioned, the labor market for many sectors is tight. And so for those of you who are planning your upcoming campaigns and you have seen this, you might want to start to think about, like, okay, how do we prepare for that, and how do we still, do our marketing? I would still go with some very similar approaches that we talked to, whether you had the upper hand or not. I think job seekers, whether they are struggling to find a job or not, are still looking for a place to land that they are going to feel comfortable with, and that they're going to want to have a good culture and a good experience. So with that, however, we are also seeing a couple other market trends. So obviously, this is no surprise. Hybrid work models are still in play, and it's kind of a standard. And I think many employees expect it. Not all sectors can provide that. I think people who work in those sectors understand that. But the hybrid model really affects how employers are recruiting. So, if you offer hybrid, or you can offer hybrid, that really expands your pool of potential candidates, because you have flexibility to hire across geography. We have actually a person on our team who lives in another part of the state, and it works perfectly fine for us. But you can hire candidates that can get to you, but maybe don't want to relocate for a variety of reasons. It is challenging, though. And for those of you who deal with this, especially with large teams, you've probably seen it already, that, if everybody has to be, if everybody's remote, you have to be hyper vigilant about communication. You have to have regular standing meetings to make sure people are on task. You have to have really good systems in order to manage project management. And depending on the type of culture that you have, it's possible that you have to micromanage employees, or really keep tabs on employees who you think aren't really holding up their end of the bargain on hybrid. So there's a lot of challenges with that as well, because it's really easy when you work in the office to go to your neighbor next door and say, hey, I really need you to take a look at something, as opposed to, can we set up a Zoom call, and here's the link, and here's that. So collaboration often is a challenge as well. But in doing that, it is important that if you do have a hybrid model, that is part of your job description. So if you haven't, I've seen a lot have already done that, but just make sure that your hybrid model is also very clear. So what are the expectations? What will you allow candidates to do? Candidates are looking for that as well. The next trend we're seeing a lot more, and I think we've been hearing this, but I've been seeing it a lot more, is that candidates, especially younger candidates, have different expectations around what work-life balance is, and people want more control of their time. And I don't know if you saw the news out of, I think it was Australia, where there's been some laws passed about, bosses aren't allowed to contact you at certain times of after 5 o'clock or some crazy thing like that. So, people after the pandemic and having that time at home and having some flexibility, they really expect more now. And I think people realized in the pandemic, as bad as it was, that they kind of liked maybe spending time with their families, or they liked being able to not have a commute, and they liked being able to have the flexibility of, you know, eating lunch with their kids or something along those lines. So right now, a study that I found also is like 70% of workers now place more time and our emphasis on work-life balance than on career progression. So that's kind of an interesting thing when it comes to, you know, how you're doing your messaging and how you're doing your marketing. It's a matter of, it's talking about your culture. It's talking about fit. It's talking about what you offer to your employees so that they can feel as though they're living their best work life, as opposed in addition to their best life. So, you know, as part of that other study, it came out also that employees are valuing companies that offer more flexibility in terms of their location, working location, and the hours that they work. And if companies are openly telling them about things like their different work policies, such as, you know, mental health days, flexible vacation, wellness programs, and all that kind of stuff, they're more likely to apply for what you're doing. So, you know, in terms of telling some of those stories, those are things that you probably want to incorporate into your hiring marketing practices. We're also seeing a greater use of AI in recruitment. And I don't know if there's anyone here has used any AI recruitment tools. I'd be interested to see what you have used. Anyone? See any hands up. But there are a lot of AI in recruitment. And so it's kind of interesting. I'll talk about it a little bit more on another slide, but there are a lot of current tools you can use, free tools, to compare candidates. There are other tools that you can use to do applicant analysis without, you know, that help reduce bias and other things. So, you know, how can you as an organization use AI for screening and interviews? You know, what are some prompts that you could put in, or what are some questions that you specifically ask yourselves as you're running resumes through? You know, maybe you have 10 resumes. Can you run them through specific AI tools to say, like, okay, you know, give me the candidates who meet all these criteria? And it can be something as simple as a simple screen, like, do they have the degree that we're looking for? Do they have these experiences? Do they have that? And think of the time that that actually would save on your entire hiring process. So that creates, you know, creating some efficiency. So we're seeing a lot more AI tools also come out in terms of actual physical products. So if, you know, obviously concern is privacy and making sure you're compliant, doing all those good things is going to be important. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of AI tools coming out on the market specific to HR hiring. We're also seeing variations, honestly, in DEI. So a lot of large Fortune 500 companies, we're seeing them eliminating or greatly reducing their DEI departments. So they're looking at not just DEI in terms of hiring, but they're looking at how do they build cultures that support environments, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. So there's the shift there that you're seeing more and more of that, where it's not just about hiring for diverse work environments, but it's actually putting that DEI work into practice. So I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that. Now, you may say, well, what does that have to do with marketing? Well, it does have a lot to do with marketing, because if, you know, you're saying you're a DEI, if DEI is a focus and something that's important, it's not just saying that you're meeting certain numbers, it's saying that you are actually putting things into practice that create environments where people feel like they're seen, heard, and valued. Also seeing, I thought this was interesting too, is we're seeing in many cases a focus on skills over degrees and having practical experience. So this really favors people who may have extensive work experience in a particular area, but don't have, a bachelor's degree, or maybe they don't have a degree in what you're specifically hiring for, but they have a degree in, or but they have 10 years work experience. So that may be something to look at. Are there skills that somebody could do at a particular job that don't require maybe a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree? Maybe it requires good things like just good problem solving skills, or do they have digital literacy? And so think about those in the jobs, because there's a lot of kids who can't afford to go to school now, and a lot of kids who don't have or couldn't afford to stay in school, or those things, because it just got so expensive, and that maybe they're great candidates, or they have great experience. They may just not have that degree that you're looking for. That's a really great thing to market, and it really gives you some of that opportunity to look at other people than maybe the regular candidates that you thought of. And then that's something that you can use as part of your job descriptions too, and using AI to put those into those job descriptions in a way that is approachable for someone who might not have the degree that you don't absolutely have to have. We're seeing a lot more freelance and gig work. This has been evolving, I think, for a couple of years, but as companies are holding off on hiring to fill positions, or maybe laying off, in many instances there's work that still needs to be done. And so I think anytime that we see shifts in the economy, you do see a rise in gig workers or freelancers or outsourced things, because benefits are expensive. Payroll taxes add to the bottom line expenses, and there's a lot of things that can be outsourced for a more reasonable cost without having to take on employees. So you're going to see gaps being filled, and I will tell you that there are opportunities here as well to use marketing to be able to fill some of those gaps too. I thought this was interesting because I talked about this last year, but I just had this on here because I thought it was interesting. Employers are investing heavily in their branding, creating personalized recruitment experiences, and showcasing company culture. I got this in some research that I was doing preparing for this, and I'm like, we talked about this a year ago. So to me, it's not so new, but you are going to start to see a lot of companies doing what we've been talking about for the last year. So if you are already starting to implement some of the things that we are talking about, you are already getting way ahead of the game. So, obviously, large companies and corporate entities are probably already ahead of the game on this anyway, but it's small to medium-sized businesses that just have not really done this quite as much. So if you're already on your way and getting started, you're ahead of the game. So I also thought this comment was interesting. Social media and video content are being used to attract talent by sharing employee stories, behind the scenes glimpses, and value driven narratives. And I thought, I wondered if they were stealing my stuff off the offline, but this is true though. You are going to see competition and people doing what you're already doing or what you're already planning on doing. So in that regard, you're going to have to keep tabs on your competition and people that you're hiring against, so that you can stay on top of things. So talking a little bit more about AI, which I'm sure that this is no surprise to anyone, is that there's going to be a lot of AI driven engagement. So a lot of organizations are already using AI chatbots and tools to engage with candidates. So there are ways on your website using certain tools that you can engage chatbots to answer questions about roles, scheduling interviews, and providing application updates in real time. And those are really great ways to connect with your potential hires. If you're hiring regularly, there are, I'm sure, many frequently asked questions that your team is answering regularly, Well, if you have a chat bot that is able to pop up on a website and say, hi, I have some questions. Can you potentially answer these questions for me? And then, you can plug those into the chat bot. And if the chat bot cannot answer a question, it says that, you can do something. That's a great question. Let me contact you with one of our HR representatives who will get back to you, or I'll forward this along to one of our HR representatives or something.
Amy,
Yes.
can I add something? One of the things that I heard about recently, kind of in that same vein, was even in the, if you have a large number of people to interview, or people who are scheduling interviews, and rather than having, one person show up for a call that, that you might see the candidate and you might not, that person might ghost you or whatever, that there actually becomes almost like an AI based queue that you're, they're the person, while they're waiting to get online with a, phone call with a recruiter, they're actually kind of having an interactive experience. And that way, it kind of helps with the, okay, if somebody's actually in the queue, they're kind of getting some connection, but you're also not wasting the time of an HR recruiter who is kind of either getting ghosted by that opportunity. And I feel like that's a really neat way, again, when you have giant hiring needs and all you feel like you're doing is scheduling appointments and people aren't showing, or, half of them are showing, half of them aren't, and your schedule is getting overtaken by that. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there as something on the horizon.
Well, and I think that that's a great point. And I mean, you can even use chatbots for some of those things too, where the chatbot can, most people who are searching for something and get to a certain point are ready to do something, right? You might be really ready to do something. If that chatbot even says something like, hey, Emily, thanks for all your questions. One of our recruiters is available right now. Do you have time to talk? Right? So you may actually, instead of worrying about ghosting somebody, you have your recruiters set up so that these bots are popping up on their screen that, you make sure you have whoever is in the rotation is able to answer those questions at that time. But if somebody clicks the yes button in your chat bot, you might be able to do an interview in real time and save yourself the back and forth of that scheduling. So I think there's some great opportunities for, for those recruiters, especially who deal with a lot of the ghosting and a lot of those issues, to maybe say like, maybe there's some opportunities to capture some people in real time and at least create some engagement opportunities to see if they're really serious.
I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff that's out there. So
oh, I know. And a lot of people are really hesitant about AI, and there are things about AI that I'm hesitant about in certain applications. However, in terms of creating efficiencies, there are so many things that can be done right now to create efficiencies using AI and understanding how to do it correctly, and very, very reasonably or free, that can just make our lives significantly easier. And if there is, especially in things that are rote or have bias, this is another one too, when we're talking about some of the AI tools, is that there are AI tools or things I don't care who you are, and we all have a bias. We all have bias, whether we think we have bias or not. It's could be how we grew up, where we grew up, could be whatever. We can say we're the most unbiased, but we all have some bias in some way. The AI tools don't. If you're prompting them to look for specific things that are very concrete, you have really good opportunities to eliminate bias. So maybe you have two final candidates. They both have interviewed wonderfully. They both agreed to the salary, any kind of salary requirements. And you're just kind of like, we can't just pick between the two, because in an interview, maybe it resonated with one person, maybe another person resonated with another. Maybe you create prompts that say there's these 5 things that are really important to us as a company. Here are our core values. Here are our needs. So maybe we don't need somebody who's a great idea person. We need somebody that's just going to get things done. but the idea person has lots of great ideas. So our bias automatically maybe goes to that person, right? And so you can say, okay, these are the 10 things that we need. This is our culture fit. Here's 2 resumes. Can you rank these based upon those particular factors? And it could be very helpful in making a final decision on a candidate to eliminate some of the bias that you might already have. So I know it's really kind of nuts. It's really kind of nuts. All right. So, and then also too, we're seeing a lot of organizations using skill assessment. So I don't know if this is super, I mean, we've always kind of done them, but we do them after lecture where people come. But it's just more for us to understand each other. So we work better as a team, but a lot of organizations are starting to use them ahead of time. And that is, I think, because they want to know that candidates can perform the jobs that they want them to perform before they are hired, because hiring is an investment, as we all know. And so they want to certainly look at those specific things before they get hired. I don't have any specific ones. I think organizations have to figure out what those are for them. But kind of going to my last point is, there are assessments that people can take and say like, okay, I want you to take this ahead of time. Well, maybe we don't need someone who is going to be, again, an idea person. Maybe we just need somebody who is, has a lot of experience in a particular thing, but they're also great at executing, because we don't need any more idea people. We need people to get stuff done. So, thinking about what those needs are as well is a great use of skill assessments, but also different AI tools. So those are things we're seeing a lot. This was also one I think that I thought was really interesting was campaign timing. So I would always think like certain industries would know, like this is our timing for hiring. There's different economic cycles, there's different hiring cycles. So whether it's maybe holiday season or it's summer, or what are those, different pockets of time where there's a lot of really strong hiring. It could be after college, graduates, high school. It could be after college graduations, things like that. But now we're starting to see how campaigns and timing align with downturns or uncertainty, or what are other, periods that are happening. Could be a growth in a particular industry. So you might see more growth in, certain manufacturing industries versus others at certain periods of time. During downturns, right? So let's take that right now, because we are seeing some layoffs, or the job market is a little more stable than it has been in terms of job, not seekers, but the employers having a little bit more control. But we're not in a recession, but right now we're seeing some ups and downs a little bit. Will be interesting to see what the Fed does with the interest rates. That could create some really interesting things. But we saw a lot of inflation over the last year. How does that impact hiring? Well, it impacts it a lot, because people are paying more for things, so they want more money, but they also have control. That created some issues. But you think of like downturns, you might have more candidates than you did a year ago. They might be more selective. What does that actually mean? They might, heck, in times like this, and they might say, oh my gosh, I just got laid off. I'm looking for an employer that's stable, that I know is going to be a strong company. How can you use those things in not only the timing of your campaigns, but your messaging, to ensure that people have that confidence or that feel before they even apply for a job with you? We've talked about growth periods as well. If it's really competitive, like it was within the last 2 years, how do you differentiate yourselves? Is it a matter of timing? Is it, not going after candidates as soon as you can, or as soon as like colleges graduates, or should you go sooner? Do you have other timing things that are important to you? And in that, how do you differentiate? Can you hire faster? Can you offer better perks, or do you have other innovative things that you can do? Is your hybrid schedule better? Do you offer more things to do when people are in person so they feel like they have a sense of community? So, you can see the difference in downturns. It's more of like, okay, our candidates are looking for something different. So we have to think of different ways to, create those opportunities for them. And in growth periods, totally different situation. Seasonality, obviously, we talk about that. It's not just summer jobs. It's not just, it could be the beginning of school year. Do you have to hire for, tax season if you're an accounting firm? Are there high times for legal? Do nonprofits, have high hiring seasons for specific things? It's not just summer employment and not just seasonal employment during the holidays that you have to think about. But then you also have to think about the competition during in season. So again, as you start to see like employer brand, people are really starting to get out there, starting to do a lot more in digital. They're starting to do a lot more of, bringing their company culture out there. You're going to have to consider that too, especially if you are hiring during those peak times. And then, having your personas will help you understand best when your job seekers are seeking. If you do have, I wanted to put this in here because I thought this was important. If you do have shortened recruiting timelines, so if you are not like hiring regularly for jobs and recruiting for jobs at regular times, if you have like a specific job you're hiring for, this definitely impacts like timelines and your marketing strategies, because you're not necessarily, if you're hiring a person here and a person there, and it's not a regular thing, you're really going to have to obviously shorten your recruitment timelines. But I think you still need to look at that long-term play of how do you make your organization look like a really great place that people want to work? Because even if you have a shortened timeline, those people who are looking at your job, your single job, are going to be looking very, very intently at your LinkedIn pages. They're going to be looking at your website. They're going to be looking at your Facebook pages, Instagram, all of those kind of things, even more so under the microscope, and they will go back months at a time. So even though your campaign recruitment timeline might be really short to fill a position that's been vacated or that is new that needs to be filled quickly, make sure that your marketing strategies are always thinking about hiring and have that embedded in there in terms of your culture fit, but realize that your recruitment timeline might be a lot shorter. All right, so we're seeing a lot in terms of digital ad shifts. And so I'm going to spend the last kind of part of our time talking about this, because we've talked a lot about digital advertising. You're going to start to see increased costs of digital advertising. I will tell you that increased costs, you're probably going to see if you are advertising on digital now, from now until about November 5th. You're going to see a lot of increased digital ad buys, specifically surrounding political stuff, right? So you're going to be in competition for getting in front of people. So you are going to see probably some increases now, because it's just there's less inventory and people will not put up with like their feeds, especially in social, in a lot, of just being advertising, right? So you're going to see some increased ad costs across the board. You're going to start to see them increase as well as more people, supply and demand, right? As more people are starting to use these platforms for their hiring or for anything, increased costs will come with that. However, we are starting to see a lot more enhanced targeting. So you are able to actually have, you're going to be able to get in front of people in a more targeted way. Again, I recognize the fact that there's certain things that you can only target for recruiting, but there are enhanced targeting things that you can look at that aren't specific, again, to age, gender, ethnicity, and all those kind of things. So you're going to see increase. People can also target ads based upon specific education, specific skills, specific interests. Those do have a little bit higher cost, but those targeted ads can reach some of those passive job seekers. So if you are looking, if people aren't necessarily looking, that's when these ads will come into play. And somebody might say, I wasn't thinking of changing jobs, but this is something that might be interesting to me. Maybe I'll apply, maybe I'll check it out. We are starting to do more, and we're starting to see more in terms of video ads. So if you've ever been on YouTube, which most of us have, we pretty much tolerate those ads at the beginning, and that we skip them after a certain period of time. But you're starting to see them on YouTube. You see them on TikTok. That really attracts a lot of the younger, more tech savvy folks. So if you're trying to get to those people, those are really good ways to go. They also have higher engagement rates. And they're also very, very economical. And certainly something I would recommend looking at. We talked a little bit about some emerging platforms. So the over-the-top advertising of getting in front of people across a variety of platforms based upon certain ad buys, but also the TV, our streaming services and things like that. You're starting to see those emerge a lot more. As people are not willing to pay exorbitant costs. I even heard something actually that, it's like, wasn't the whole purpose of us going to these streaming services to drop cable, when now we're paying just as much for streaming services as we're paying for cable? So people are getting tolerant of commercials again. And then TikTok. So TikTok used to be a little bit prohibitive for some people just because it was unfamiliar. It didn't have great targeting. You could only target by like large geographic area. It's becoming a lot more easy to target on TikTok. And it is actually a relatively low barrier to entry at about $500, I think, is the minimum ad spend you have to do on TikTok, which is higher than some of the other platforms. But if that is really where your job candidates are, and you can do some really great short form video that tells a story really, really well, TikTok is probably something to take a look at. We're also starting to see an increase of programmatic ads. So this is where AI optimizes ad placement for you. So it puts it in real time across different platforms, and they help target specific candidates based upon behavior, skills, and interests. Excuse me. And that helps lead to more efficient recruitment and effective recruitment. We're starting to see a lot more targeting on niche platforms. So it's like community boards, job boards, social media groups that target candidates specifically that have interests. So it's not just a general targeting, it's targeting within maybe a group or other areas. So they're being tailored to really reach highly skilled or hard to find talent. So if there are different opportunities to do that, you might want to think of that if you have like a hyper specialization that you want to try to reach. See a lot more personalization ads. So there's a lot of opportunities to personalize ads. So we've personalized a lot on digital. And again, it's how do you have relevant messaging around that particular persona? It's including the job description that's relevant to that persona. It's having ad copy that is specific to that persona. It's not just everything straight across the board. So how do you personalize that? So we've talked about that a lot, of making sure that what you're putting out there actually meshes with what people are looking for. Video job ads, we talked about video. Video has significantly higher engagement rate over anything. Again, I think our stat was 75%. People remember 75% more out of video than they actually remember out of anything else. So video is definitely an interesting way to go. Plus, if you can get some good B-roll or activity that you have at your organization, that can have a lot of use over a lot of different things. So investing in that, and then doing some simple things to change out your video. If you plan it well, you can get a lot out of it. Again, we talked about the AI powered ad targeting, how do we use AI to do that? And how do we use our analytics? So this is another way we can use AI, is that we can take our digital analytics based upon the ads. We can actually put our ad in there. We can put our analytics in our ChatGPT or Claude, and we can say, hey, using this information, how can I better optimize this ad to increase engagement rates and click-throughs? So don't be afraid to ask AI for help and suggestions. Again, I would also recommend, though, take it for what it is, and don't always use it as gospel. But I think it's important to use those tools to analyze even your own data and look for information. Oops. So then we talk about location-based ads and geofencing. So this is where you kind of feel like someone is following you, the government is following you. We're looking at things like hi, I'm in or near your business, and all of a sudden I am in your geofence, and now maybe say, hey, looking for a job, come find us at such and such place. So there's opportunities to do location-based and geofenced ads where you target people specifically when they're in your particular location. And then how do you, this is a shift, but something I've talked about a lot is, making sure that we optimize our applications for mobile. All right, so last thing I want to talk about was some of the new tools specific around AI. So as I mentioned, there are specific AI tools for both screening and shortlisting. It will certainly help with some with time and efficiency. So there are two, I did not check these out and I don't endorse these, but I will say there were two different platforms that are using AI to screen resumes and assess candidates based upon keywords, experience, and relevance. And they are called HireVue, HIRE, capital VUE, one word, and then PyMetrics, PyMetrics, all one word. So those are two different platforms that can be used to screen and shortlist. You can also do, again, I mentioned, how do you use your real-time data to predict and analyze what you're doing so that you target things better. You can also optimize and grow your content for mobile, video, and social. So this is a really great opportunity to take one big piece of content. You could even take your job description and say, okay, we're ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI platform you use. We are hiring for this particular position, and we are creating a campaign to hire for this particular person. We have these particular platforms that we are looking at. Can you please write 5 social posts? Can you write a social ad, give recommendations for art, and do all of these other things for us, and hit send. And you can even have it review your hiring pages to see if there are different things that you can do to optimize them. Yes, Emily.
Oh, I was just coming on to see if I was going to say if we're getting close to our.
We're almost done.
Time.
We're almost done.
If there were any pieces we needed to wrap.
Yep, we're almost done. This is my last slide. And then, so that's something that you can also use. You can also use AI interviews. And then, as I mentioned, there are ways that you can use it specifically for bias reduction. All right, so to recap, there we go. Oops. So to recap, obviously we want you to use a marketing mindset with hiring personas. I won't say again. Content and storytelling wins. Digital marketing still wins. And then AI is probably one of the biggest things that we saw shifting and changing since we met last. So.
It's a lot of really good information. And I feel like there's so many more to have. I mean, we could potentially even have a separate session just discussing AI. But I did want to open it up if anybody does have some questions here toward the finish. We are creeping up on that 11 o'clock hour. Sorry for the delay in our start. So if anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question or raise a hand or drop it in chat, let me know. Any other
Please
themes,
do.
takeaways?
You have us for 5 more minutes. Get free advice.
And I hope this won't be the last of our series. I think we're talking about what we can do to potentially tie into specific needs. So if you do have questions, that'll help us identify what we should talk about next, and happy to have those follow-up conversations as well. So if there are things that come up that, you're thinking about it later in the day, driving somewhere, and you're like, oh, I meant to ask that, we are happy to kind of tie those loose ends together and even share out some of those comments and feedback. So if something does come, don't feel like this was your last chance, but grateful.
Absolutely. So, also too, if you have a question that you don't specifically want to ask here, I get that. So it might be something that is definitely private, you don't want to share. Feel free to send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if, obviously if there's anything that you guys are interested in talking about, please let me know.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Have a great, beautiful fall day. For those of you, if anybody's out of Ohio, it's beautiful here, so enjoy it.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Amy. And thanks to everybody who was able to make it today. We'll share this recording.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.